everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of March and the full supermoon that we have coming up in Virgo on the 9th. But I also want to talk about some broader aspects as well. Now, 2020 is going to be an incredibly powerful, transformational and transitional year. I think we all know that, because if we look back to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that we had in Capricorn on the 12th of January, we haven't had that conjunction in Capricorn since 1285. If we look further down the year 2020 to the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which happens every 20 years, but it hasn't happened in an air sign series. It's going into Aquarius at the end of the year, which is an air sign. It hasn't happened in a series of air signs since 1425, and it's going to start a whole 200-year series of conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn in air, which is about a new world view. So this big shift we've got from Capricorn to Aquarius energy, which is so different. 2020 is the year that that's happening. We're going to have 6 eclipses this year instead of the normal 4. Got a very powerful one in the middle of the year. We've got 6 supermoons. Again, very unusual to have that many. And there are many, many, many other specifics I could talk about that would fill a whole workshop about why 2020 is such a powerful year for us. But even March is power-packed energy. It's dynamic. It's action-oriented. And we're going to feel that. It's going to build through the month, and we're going to feel that particularly in the second half of the month, which I'll be talking about in the next video. But even in this first half, we're going to start to feel this, because what's happening exactly in the second half, but it's building into it in the first, is that Mars, now in Capricorn, is going to not only conjunct the planetary patterns in Capricorn that we had with that cluster of planets in January, it's going to actually conjunct the current planetary positions of Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto that we have now. And that is going to set up for later in the year. It's not only the echo of what was happening in January, but it's setting up a theme for the second half of the year when Mars comes into its own sign of Aries and starts to square all those Capricorn planets. So very powerful. So whatever was happening for you in January, see where the last 10 degrees of Capricorn fall in your chart, and whatever was happening then for you in March is going to be re-energized, and also Jupiter is going to be traveling through that section of Capricorn as well, sort of re-energized, reactivated and made bigger. So if whatever was happening in January for you was good, you could get a very nice series of rewards or recognition happening for you, but particularly in the second half of March. So getting into the detail, in the first 4 days of March, we have Venus moving from 25 to 29 degrees of Aries and coming to square Saturn and Pluto. Now, we have this with recurring frequency, but normally if this falls in your 5th house or your 7th house, and if you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of houses, you can download a free birth chart from my website, and then if you check this link above, that will take to my store. You can get a 2-part tutorial video series which will explain to you exactly how to find where these points are in your chart and what it may mean for you. Because if Venus in Aries is falling in your 5th house or your 7th house, this could stir up issues, feelings of, I want more freedom, I want more independence, that's the Aries side, but I also like the security and stability, but there's also the control in relationship. So don't make any sudden decisions, because this will move on fairly quickly. On the 5th of March, Venus will enter its own sign of Taurus, and that will stabilise the emotions a little bit. But by the 8th, just 3 days later, Venus is conjunct Uranus at 4 degrees of Taurus. So this again raises surges of I need freedom, I need independence. So these are very transitory, these passings of Venus. So just observe your feelings in relationship, if those are the areas of your chart that are being activated, and just let it pass before you necessarily make any big decisions. Then we have the full supermoon at 19 degrees and 37 minutes of Virgo. It's happening on the 9th of the month. It's happening at 10:47 a.m. Pacific and 5:47 p.m. UK time. Now, this is the first of a series of 3 full supermoons. So what that means is the moon is much closer to the Earth and in its orbit. Now, a full moon is already the peak of the moon cycle. So it's a time of closure or completion or culmination, or you could see the fruits of your labour. It's often a time when feelings and emotions run very high because the moon is our emotional state and it's coming to its peak. But we might feel that even more strongly because the moon is so close to the Earth. It's a supermoon. That very much has a strong effect on the tides and the Earth's tectonic plates, but also, as I say, on our emotions. So we may see some Earth changes happening round about this time. That's entirely possible. So Virgo, what are we going to be concerned about? Because Virgo is also the sign of worry. Often you can give yourself a very hard time if you have planets in Virgo. It's anxiety and worry. Well, Virgo is also linked to tiny things like microbes and health and hygiene. So it's possible that there's still a lot of concern about the coronavirus. I think this could represent a peak, not necessarily the peak in the virus, but because Virgo is a mutable sign, it has no boundaries, and because at this full supermoon, I'm going to be talking about this more in a moment, but we have the sun within a degree of Neptune, and we know from my last video that Neptune has this kind of mutation association, this chameleon, this can turn into anything it likes. It is possible that this could see a peak in the coronavirus numbers. But it is a very dynamic full moon as well. We have 6 planets in cardinal signs. We have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto in Capricorn. We also have Eris and Chiron in Aries. We have 7 planets in Earth signs. We have the 4 in Capricorn, we have the moon in Virgo, Earth sign, and we also have Venus and Uranus in Taurus. So this isn't just dynamic and action-oriented and getting the show on the road and making things happen. It's also very practical. It's very earth-based. Now, that strong emphasis in Capricorn is excellent for manifestation. Capricorn is one of the best signs for manifestation. So this is going to be even stronger, actually, in the second half of the month because we've got more Aries energy coming in then. But nevertheless, you can start to use this to really plan what you would like to achieve at this time. Very good energy for that as well. Now, the other aspect of Virgo is efficiency. It's very methodical, organised energy. It likes to get everything running like clockwork. And for me, it's very much the sign linked to feng shui, where we declutter. And that's excellent in the Northern Hemisphere. It's going to be springtime, getting close to that. A great time to declutter your home. But because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, it's also, I feel, about decluttering your energy, but decluttering your thinking. So it's a very good time to start to observe your self-talk, your thinking patterns. So often, unconsciously, we run on those patterns of, I'm not young enough, rich enough, pretty enough, available enough, whatever, to make certain things happen in our lives. So this grunge runs in the background. So as I've suggested in the past, I think it's a great idea to stick post-it notes around your house, on bathroom mirrors, kitchen cupboards, fridges, to say, what's your thinking? What are you thinking about right now? What's your frequency? Because that's a way that we can, in a very practical sense, start to become conscious of our thinking and change. Once we can become conscious, we can start to think, how can I change my thinking to something much more positive and productive? Because Mercury is not only the ruler of Virgo, the ruler of this full supermoon, but it's also incredibly strong here because it's stationary direct at 28 degrees of Aquarius. Now, when planets are stationary, in a natal chart, for instance, they are incredibly strong. They're often quite dominating in someone's personality and life. So here, this is very strong. Now in Aquarius, this can bring up original, brilliant, genius, out-of-the-box thinking. And to me, this really is giving us a hint or a glimpse of quantum leaps in our evolution, which are going to be linked to very high level, super fast thinking and processing. Just leaps in how we're able to think and process. We must always remember to be anchored in our heart, remember, not all just head. But I think they're going to be very big jumps. It could even, as we move through 2020 and into 2021, this could produce new schools of thought. I think it's going to be very exciting. There could be new discoveries in genetics, quantum physics, and all kinds of science where we use technology very beneficially. Medical treatments, that sort of thing, has just been a wonderful discovery in Boston and MIT, where they have been able to discover an algorithm in a computer that can actually deal with and cure antibiotic resistant bacteria. But the human beings had to have the thought of doing that before the computer could do it. So it's that kind of very, very positive blend that I think we could see. I think we're going to understand the power of our minds and the understanding of our minds and our brains in a much, much bigger way as we move through 2020, but particularly into 2021 and beyond. I think this is one of the very big themes of Aquarius, this genius, high-level thinking. So all of that is super true too. Now, kind of linked to this, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the Sun in a tight conjunction to Neptune. The Sun is at 19 of Virgo, Neptune is at of Pisces. Neptune is at 18 of Pisces, so they're in a tight conjunction. Now this, you'll remember from my last video about the new moon in Pisces, it can really bring up this dreamy, intuitive, mystical, visionary quality where it's very easy to access source and a sense of oneness and a sense of divinity, all living things having consciousness and divinity. It's really beautiful. But it's a very fine perception. And when we put that ability at this full supermoon together with this stationary Mercury in Aquarius, I think this is really suggesting a telepathic ability that we can rediscover. I believe that human beings were able to operate telepathically in civilizations in the past, but I believe that that's going to start to come back in, that without the technology, we can communicate with each other. And that is really very, very exciting. So as I say, new schools of thought can emerge from this as well. It's just going to give us the faintest hint, I think, of some jumps about what is possible in the understanding and the power of our minds and our thinking. We also have a very practical focus at this full supermoon. We have a fabulous series of 3 trines from the moon at 19 of Virgo to Mars at 15 of Capricorn, Jupiter at 21 of Capricorn, and Pluto at 24 of Capricorn. So this again is about making something practical, having something that we want to achieve, and that being relatively easy for us to manifest. So this is a real powerful help to whatever we want to actually practically bring into manifestation in our lives. So it's really excellent for that too. And then another theme at this full supermoon, which is a bit different, is we have Chiron in Aries, 5 degrees of Aries, square to the nodal axis at 5 degrees of Cancer Capricorn. So the nodal axis, the north node, is where we are evolving to collectively. Now, where Chiron sits is where there is a wound. Natally, if we think of Chiron in Aries, Aries is the sign of I am, I exist. So people who have Chiron in Aries, there's often a question mark about this. Do I have a right to exist? Now, Gandhi and Martin Luther King were both born with Chiron in Aries. And you can see why culturally they might have had those feelings when they were very young. Do I have a right to exist in this society? In addition to that, adding to this theme, But by the way, Chiron, where it sits in our chart is where we're born with a weakness, but we are meant to turn it into a strength, which is what Gandhi and Martin Luther King did with leadership. In addition, kind of feeding this theme as well, we have Eris, dwarf planet of discord, where people feel slighted, not heard, disregarded, in square to Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto at this time. It's actually square to Pluto the entire year, all of 2020. So this brings this feeling of, I'm not heard in society, so I'm going to take to the streets and protest very strongly, as we've seen in Hong Kong. That's going to run all year. This sense of protest. So both together are really suggesting this sense of inequality in society, of some people not being heard, not being seen, not feeling they have an equal right in society. What adds to that theme as well is through March until the 22nd, Saturn is, from the 10th to the 21st, in fact, 10th to the 21st, Saturn is at what's known as the anaretic degree of Capricorn. 29 degrees of Capricorn is known, 29 degrees of any sign is known as the anaretic degree, and it tends to bring up the more extreme aspects of the symbolism of that sign, or the shadow side of that sign. So here it's about control. It's about a tighter control. And Capricorn is always about top-down power, governmental power, institutional, corporate, top-down power. I tell you what to do, rules and regulations. So Saturn as well is feeding this top-down, power being at the top, this sense of inequality in societies. So people are going to be stirred up in order to change that. People are going to feel that they need to demand a right to be heard in a bigger way in society. And I think we can all just off the top think of many countries where that feeling is very strong. So there's strong yang energy through this first half, even stronger in the second half. And I really want to say that whenever we have very powerful, turbulent events happening in the world, very dynamic events in the world, as we clearly have this month and ongoing in 2020, it is very easy for us as human beings to feel buffeted by outer events. Yet another kind of crazy thing happening in the world, the kicks and knocks of life, the rubber hitting the road. But when our reference point for reality is outer, it's very easy for us to become the victim of circumstances, to kind of give away our power to the outer event or other people, that they're in charge and we're not, we have no power. So what all of these astrological aspects are teaching us very much through 2020 is that the work is inner. We have to up our game in understanding that our reference point for reality is inner. That our reality is created from inside, from our radio dial, from our centre, rather than our reaction to outer events. If you think the great spiritual masters of all time, they always said that, it wasn't what happened to you, it's how you react to what happens to you. And that if you can keep a sense of equanimity, whatever outer events are occurring, then you are truly in a state of peace. So this is what we have to find. We have to cultivate this inner sense of centre, of strength, of power, not in an egoic sense, but in a sense of peace and calm. Chariklo, wonderful symbolism, will help us with this in terms of an infinite state of being, this infinite state of peace that is all loving, always there for us, and will enable healing. So it's this kind of dropping into stillness that is inner that we really have to work on, not just in March, but all the way through 2020. So I'll be back soon with the second half of March, because that really will have some strong yang energy. So hope that's helped. Have a wonderful supermoon full supermoon in Virgo on the 9th, and thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.